Since the release of Masterwork Range, Equilibrium Perk is usually the recommendation for it. In fact, if you watched any of my guides or PVM videos, you've probably seen me using it myself. What if we replace Equilibrium 4 with Biting 4? Is it actually worse, or have we been overlooking something? I'm Wings of Absurdity, a range content creator. Let's find out. What I've displayed on screen are the key differences between a biting build and an equilibrium build. To keep things simple, if I'm using biting, I'll also be leaning into critical strike setup. That means Shadow Tendrils becomes a stronger ability again, and the Stalker's Ring is back on the table as a viable option. The trade-off is that I'm giving up the damage boost that Equilibrium provides to things like poison damage, aftershock, and crackling. I will also lose the reflect damage from lacking the Ring of Retribution. The question is whether the extra critical strike potential can make up for everything we're sacrificing. I feel like half of my channel has become either Vorcap Test or Kerapac Test. So yes, we're going back to hard mode Kerapac again. The plan is simple. I'll do a series of runs using Masterwork Range with Equilibrium, and then I'll switch over to a Masterwork setup using Biting, and then run the same boss again. Once I've collected enough kills from both setups, I'll compare the kill times and see whether Biting can actually compete with Equilibrium, or if Equilibrium truly deserves the reputation as the go-to perk for Masterwork Ranged. It has been a while since I've last done a hard mode Kerapac test video using the same equilibrium build I used to get my Grandmaster Kerapac kill. I gotta say, I've been quite consistent in consistently phasing Kerapac in phase 2 right when I use Time Warp and Death Swiftness on max Deathspores. It just feels so good to do that again. But when I switched to Binding, I was very inconsistent with being able to do that. I would say because of the lack of consistency, I couldn't do it. There was only one time I got really lucky with a Ripper Demon and got it, and then ended up with a 216.2 kill time. Still, the results are as expected. Biting is less consistent because you're relying on the fact that you need to critical hit, and if you don't, you're losing out on damage. Kerapac is a boss that can be poisoned, which can be an unfair comparison because of equilibrium. It's hard to find good bosses to test this setup on. Some of them are affected from damage boosting passives that skews the result, or just die too fast to get a good feel on how it performs.
How about Nakatra?
Absolutely not. I hate that boss so much. I don't want to do it.
Come on, you beat 4K Amaska twice. Nakatra should be cake.
But I hate that shockwave mechanic and her autos at the same time.
If I hear you doubting yourself again, I will personally throw you into the wilderness volcano.
I'd like to see you try.
Newbie fake ranger.
The kill times with Equilibrium is a bit more chaotic than Kerapac. Because Sanctum has a lot of mechanics that delays your damage on the boss, it can easily make your kill time slower by a larger margin. Still, a few things remain consistent. I can skip the Moonstone Shard mechanic in phase 1 at Vermix, Kazalam I skip the Scarus mechanic, and Nakatra, well, I usually can one cycle it now. At first at Nakatra, I actually struggled to skip the Scarab mechanics, but later on I got very consistent with it and managed to get a Grandmaster kill. With biting, I noticed at Vermix, sometimes I'm so inconsistent that I ended up spawning shards that landed on the same tile that I needed to be on, which is a reset. At Kazalam, I'm noticing I'm taking a bit longer that I even got a Moonstone Shard during the Obelisk phase, which is not great. The inconsistencies were just so visible to my face that no, I can firmly say that Equilibrium is better on Masterwork. At Nakatra, it became even more likely that I'm not even able to get a Scarab skip due to the uncertainty of biting. And for the wolves, if I don't crit, my snapshot spam is basically very weak. Was still able to one cycle on the Catra, but the kill was quite slow compared to Equilibrium. So what's the verdict in the end? Given that Equilibrium provides a substantial boost to poison damage, aftershock, and crackling, I still firmly believe Equilibrium is the superior perk choice for Masterwork range. The advantage of Equilibrium isn't just a direct ability damage increase, because you're not relying on critical strikes, you're also free to take advantage of other ring options. Ring of Retribution, for example, provides additional reflect damage, whereas biting focused masterwork setups is largely locked into using Stalker's Ring to maximize its value. If you're fighting a boss that's immune to reflect damage, you can also swap over to Asylum Surgeon Ring. That's not to say biting is bad, it's still perfectly a viable option for Masterwork range, especially if you can't afford Equilibrium yet. However, as a long-term upgrade path, I would still recommend replacing it with Equilibrium when you eventually have the opportunity. Overall, after testing both setups, I don't see enough evidence for me to move away from Equilibrium. It remains my recommendation for Masterwork range unless you're planning on doing some crazy hybrid stuff. Anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.